It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. And Craig, I'd like to start with you this morning. A lot of activity in your party. A couple of people have decided to run, including former Vice President Mike Pence. And it looks like Chris Christie will be announcing shortly, and we now have a North Dakota governor in the race. What's your assessment?
You know, I'm kind of pleased with the Republican Party in terms of putting candidates out there that, you know, some may be a long shot, but running for president is a very honorable thing to do. And the fact that so many people, I think Politico had a list of like almost nearly 20 who have either declared or might declare. There's some businessmen, entrepreneurs, Nikki Haley, governor. We have two Black candidates who were in this race. Who would have thought? I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think the answer to the question is many Republicans no longer see Trump as a given. They actually would like to win an election. A candidate who's failed to get the popular vote, who's probably, going to have multiple indictments before we're through, is not the kind of person to lead the party. And so I think people are looking at it and saying, why not? Maybe there's a chance here. I think one of the things we have to remember in all this, I know Al agrees, is that so much of the polling is name identification at this point. So the fact that the media has made a big to-do about Ron DeSantis from Florida, he's up there with Trump in a lot of these in these descriptions or these polls. But Nikki Haley is a real contender. Chris Christie, who just got in, is, I think, just can't wait to play the attack dog to Trump. And that's another factor in all of this, that the more people that are taking Trump on directly, the more that star, to the extent that it even exists, the more it's going to be diminished. There will be a point in time when some of these candidates have to say to their supporters that the time has come to endorse someone, because I think that too many people in the race, if Trump can hold on to 28, 29, 30% of Republican voters, he suddenly is stronger in a divided field. But I think at the beginning, this is just fine, and I think most of them are very dedicated to giving voters an alternative to Donald Trump, and I hope they'll do the right thing when they get down to the top, 3 or 4 in this race, and not fracture the anti-Trump vote too much.
Al, some people say that with more people in the Republican race, it will be more likely that Donald Trump might get the nomination. Is that how you look at it?
I think the question of whether Donald Trump gets the nomination probably has more to do with the special prosecutor than the primary races and the other candidates. Look, I expect that there's going to be an earthquake in the Republican race over the next few months. If it's true that the special prosecutor is going to come down with indictments and to listen to former Trump crony Bill Barr talk about how much danger the former president is in, makes me think there may be something actually real that could actually penetrate. I think the more candidates in the race, in one sense, might help Trump, but it's also more people to beat up on him. And as his legal problems get worse, the attacks will become stronger. So it's probably not going to be an advantage. I look at Mike Pence, and to be honest with you, I don't see any path for him to go anywhere. I mean, I might be wrong. I'm not a Republican. I don't understand Republican politics, but Pence is different than the other candidates because he's so well known, and his numbers are still excruciatingly low. He really doesn't know how to handle Trump. One time he says nobody's above the law, and then he says the next half of his sentence is that a former president basically shouldn't be indicted. I mean, I guess if you say that nobody's against the law, then maybe a former president could be indicted. So I mean, I just don't. I don't see. He's going to go in circles. I read somewhere that one of his friends said he's basically hoping for divine intervention, and maybe the evangelicals will save him in Iowa, but I really don't doubt it. I think Chris Christie is an interesting factor in the race. He has stunningly low approval ratings among Republicans. I mean, I'm stunned. They're right at the bottom of any list of Republicans, famous or not famous, that you asked. He's right at the bottom, but he's a disruptor, and he will attack Trump, and he's already doing it. And he may get some benefit from that if Trump really starts to go down. He's certainly going to be he's going to go after him completely. And I think he's also going to have a New Hampshire strategy. And again, he's going to have a lot of luck. It's going to have, Trump's going to have to go down at exactly the right time. And maybe he can break through. But to be honest with you, I don't see much of a path for him, but you never know. Now, the other guy who got in the race, who I had never even heard of, was the North Dakota governor. And I would be, probably be quick to write him off, except for one thing. He's a self-funder. And so he's going to have a lot of money. Maybe he'll do what David Trone's doing in the Senate race. I suspect it'll have the same impact in both. But I mean, I can't turn on my television or open my mail without seeing something about David Trone for U.S. Senate in Maryland. And I suspect he's going to go down big to Angela Alsobrook. So I don't really expect Burgum to do well, but a self-funder, you never know. Well, I'm sort of where Craig is. The person that I think, if this whole thing gets blown up, who has the chance to emerge and be a very strong national candidate is Nikki Haley.
Can I go back just for a minute to
Sure.
Mike Pence? Pence, although not somebody that I'm strongly attracted to, has some advantages. He's been around this circuit a lot. He's a pretty formidable campaigner, I think. He's worked tirelessly on behalf of candidates across the country, and thus he's built sort of a political presence in some of these key states, especially. And I watched the town hall last night that CNN did with him, and he really pulls no punches in terms of his evangelical Christianity, his approach to issues like immigration, what his faith means to him as he looks at these issues. That is going to resonate with many, many Republican voters, including some who kind of overlooked Trump's personal issues and voted for him. And so even though Pence does attack Trump in some ways, it's nothing like the former governor of New Jersey. What Pence does do, I think, and will do, is remind some of these voters in real local retail kind of politics about faith, its importance, and how he uses it to address issues. And so, again, it's just another dimension of how Trump, I think, is going to be marginalized by some of these candidates, even if they don't get the nomination.
Yeah, I guess so. I'd say that he'd be more likely to be like Jerry Huckabee in the sense it may do well with the evangelicals, but I think Trump or that Pence is different for all the things that Craig said, all the stuff that he said about him, and all the chits that he's built up. You'd think when he got in, he wouldn't be at the bottom of the barrel. And, he runs behind Nikki Haley in most polls. In the last one I looked at, he was even with Christie. So you'd think a former vice president would have some residual support to start. And so, again, I might be wrong. Craig certainly knows the Republican Party a lot better than I do, even though I'm not sure anybody knows this Republican Party. But I just don't see much future for Mike Pence.
Hey, Craig, I want to also look at the Democratic side. I think a lot of people have been surprised by Robert Kennedy Jr.'s poll numbers. He's close to 20% in the Democratic Party. This is not, a typical kind of result for a conspiratorial candidate. What's your thought on that? And is there any really significant threat to the Biden candidacy?
I actually don't think it's a threat to Biden at this stage. And I read the articles, and Al will have more insight into this than I do. But, I think if you were to take a really solid poll and characterize or profile what Robert Kennedy stands for, what he said, what he's done, but don't use his name, Biden would do way better. And probably the profile candidate would be in single digits. I think it's the Kennedy name. I think what it does say, though, is that there's a block of voters willing to tell a pollster today among the Democrats that they'll look at and entertain someone else. But I don't think it's risen to the level of a threat to Biden at this point. But you have to say that assumes that Biden stays strong and fully capable of going forward in this race.
Al?
Well, I agree with Craig. I don't think Robert Kennedy's a threat to Biden. Robert Kennedy Jr. is a threat to Biden. I think he's a warning to Biden. I've looked at some of his numbers. He in one poll, excuse me, recent poll I saw, he had a positive approval rating. Well, people don't know him. They know the name and they don't know what he stands for. Once they know what he stands for, that will drop. But recent polling has shown that 45% or so of Democrats don't want Biden to run again. And I think that's what Kennedy and even Williamson to some degree reflect, that the Democrats have some qualms about Biden. And the thing that I think I said this last week or the week before, but Amy Walder of the Cook Report said that Biden's strength is not from who he is, but from who he isn't. And Biden is definitely a candidate that stands up better when he has an opponent, because he may not be the strongest candidate. He may not be, the most vital person, but he's steady. And he's been a good president. And he's been bipartisan. And if you judge him on how he looks and all that, you may not be particularly eager to support him. But if he's up against somebody like Trump or a nutcase like Robert Kennedy, he will do well. But he needs the contrast. And so right now, I'd say that Robert Kennedy Jr. is not a threat. But if I were in the White House, I'd say this is a big warning sign. We've got to improve our game.
Yeah. Well, we have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.